This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I am in the company of an old friend of ours, Mr. Malcolm Cox. How are you today, sir?
I'm well, thank you, Jamie.
Thank you for joining us today at Good Food Revolution. We are recording a segment for a kind of on and off series that we run called The Old Hands, because you have been in the wine business for quite some time, and I'd like to pick your brain about how you entered into the wine business and a little bit about your history within it.
Well, let me see. It wasn't a career that I originally chose, I must say. I was in engineering for most of my life and in sales. And then a company I worked for in Toronto decided to close the department I ran. And so I thought, what to do next? And I knew a gentleman by the name of Steve Thurlow, who had a wine agency in Toronto, Wine Cellars International, I think I recall. And Steve said, well, if you'd like to learn the business, you can work for me, straight commission. And he said, here's my clue. He said, you will meet a lot of great people in this industry, but you won't make a lot of money. And that turned out to be quite true. I met wonderful people. So I worked for Steve for a while, then he decided to close his, and actually we were acquired by Corby's.
Oh, yes.
So I had about 6-8 months with Corby's as the agent man for consignment wines in Ontario for Corby's. Great company to work with, enjoyed that well, but then that all changed as well. So I decided to get my own license, which I did, and went through the whole rigorous process of dealing with the LCBO in order to get consignment space so that you can order your wines and bring them into the country. And you, of course, have to get about 500 cases under your belt first, and then they give you some consignment space. I was very fortunate, and I picked up many of the wineries that Steve and I had before, including Hitching Post. I think you've met Gray Hartley when he was in Toronto.
Yes.
And he was quite true. They're excellent people in this business. So I met Gray and others in California, Paso Robles area, and then a few up in Oregon and Washington. And then decided to hit Australia. So I did a trip to Australia. Met Sam Neill in New Zealand, and we picked up Sam Neill's wines and brought those into Ontario as well. So it's been a long time working this business. It's hard work. You have to, of course, get your wines into the warehouse and then buy them out of the warehouse and deliver to the customer and hopefully get paid by the customer at some point later. And that all worked out fine. Then I would say about 13 years ago, we decided to move to London, Ontario. Maintain my customers in Toronto for that period of time. But as you get a bit older, Jamie, I found the cases get somewhat heavier.
Oh, yes.
And a lot of people have noticed that as well. So I decided to, sort of pack this in. Well, it also, quite frankly, got difficult to deal with the board. And I would submit many really, really interesting wines to them, and they'd get passed over. So,
now, for those people unfamiliar, what exactly do you mean when you say submit to the board?
So how it works with the LCBO is, as an agent, you represent the winery here in Ontario, and you're their representative for this province. You present your wines to the LCBO. There's a call comes out twice a year for products for the vintages portfolio. And you can submit your wines to that. They get checked over. But it's a tough grind because you might get, let's say, 800 Shirazes might get submitted, and then they'll do maybe 5 for tasting and pick 4 to go on the shelves.
I see.
So the odds are sort of stacked against you from the get-go. But we did that. It was fun to do. I met some wonderful people in the business and have stayed friends and in contact with them, I think, ever since. But I think about 2 years ago, I said, you know what, the cases are getting too heavy to carry now, so I decided to sort of pack that in. But I haven't left the industry completely. I'm a Rotarian in London, and we hold various wine tasting events and fundraising events where what I learned over the years has come to play, and people enjoy the wines that we pick. So that kind of quickly, in a nutshell, is how that went.
How have you seen the tastes of people in Ontario change over your time in the wine world?
I think they're open to trying different wines, but the problem I still maintain is that a lot of the good ones don't get here.
Right.
I'm sure you know as well that there's so many wineries to choose from. And when you do go to the store today, you're going to see the same Chardonnays and the same Cabernets again and again. But they have, I think people are experiencing more. I also am a big supporter of Ontario wines. I think that this province and BC are creating some excellent products, and people really need to open up, their choices and try them. Ontario makes some superb Chardonnay and great Syrahs, and Pinot Noir, I think, does really well in this province. So I find people are willing to try them. The sort of stigma against Ontario seems to be declining somewhat, which is great news. So I'm a big supporter of it, and I think, support local. These guys are doing hard work, and good for them.
I remember you were selling Creekside for some time, right?
That's right. We looked after Creekside wines. I was working with another agent called Hobbs & Company at the time, who were the agent for Creekside. Then they opened up Queenston Mile, which is their sort of higher level brand. Both good wines. Rob Power is a winemaker there. Know him well. He does some good stuff too. So
great chap, yeah. How would you say your palate has changed over the years? Because I'd be curious as to your first experiences of wine and then the kind of wines that you grew to love throughout your decades in the industry.
Well, I'm going to say back when in my youth, when you were able to buy wine, the choices that were available were somewhat limited. It was Blue Nun and the Black Tower and Sexardi from Hungary.
Of course.
So when you went out for dinner, you didn't have a lot of great wines to choose from. In my years in this business, I discovered Pinot Noir. And I remember a story that Sam Neill was, when he was an actor in his early days, that James Mason had said to him, I want you to try this wine. This is Pinot Noir. Never forget this. So I think of what I enjoy most is Pinot Noir, because I find it can vary so much from country to country, from vineyard to vineyard, and from vintage to vintage. But that's my choice of wines.
Another question for those people who will be kind of curious about this, I think. Please explain how it works when you do get a listing and how one has to sell through that wine.
When you do get a listing, the order might be for anywhere from 200 to 500 cases. Usually 200 if it's the higher price wine, and 500 if it's a lower price wine, around $18.95 or $20. And there's a certain time you have to sell that through the stores. That requires going to visit the stores. There was a while when you could actually meet with the store staff and do a tasting with them. That stopped during COVID, naturally, but it started up again. So you have to go to stores, meet with the managers in the store or the wine experts in the store, and explain why your product's so good, and then teach them a few things about it. But there's a timeline on what you've got to sell those things through. The other barrier is that the costs can be high, because if that wine hasn't sold out in that time, it can get seized and goes up to, I think it's store one. It used to be store one, where it's reduced in price. So it's a tough game, but it is fun, and I think the delights are enjoying the tasting at the end of the day with the customers that you meet, in sitting with people in the restaurant and having them taste your wine that you know is good, and having them enjoy it as well. So it really is a personal relationship with those people. It's not so much a commodity as kind of a pleasure to share with them.
So Malcolm, another question for you would be, what would you say in your experience are the greatest barriers to entry for someone trying to make it in the wine business in Ontario?
I'm going to be serious. I think the limitations that the board will put on as to how many cases you can bring in and have in the warehouse, and also the restrictions on the time that you have now to sell those wines out of the warehouse. And again, like many things, their costs have gone up too. So it's really tough for an individual to run an agency these days. It's a lot of hard work. And as Steve had said to me back in the past, you'll meet great people, which you do, but you might not make a lot of money.
Any advice you would give to someone wanting to break into the industry, into the wine industry in Ontario as an importer?
You can get your license. It's easy to apply for. You do that through the AGCO. I'm not sure what the price is today. It's about $75 or $80 for a license. That allows you to represent wineries in other countries. Then reach out to those people, go see them, taste them, see what you like, and or start working for a company to begin with, and then branch off and start your own agency when you're big enough to do so.
Smashing. Thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution today, Malcolm. Great to catch up with you over a glass of rosé.
Thank you, JB. Much appreciated.
Cheers.
Have a good day.
Bye for now.